really getting to know these future leaders, understanding the pressures on them and how they're thinking about their futures and helping them see that this is a path. I mean, truly, I think this is the path to no regrets. If you're a civic minded young leader who wants to help build a strong future in your country, this is just such an amazing path to that.
Messy and masterful. In this podcast, we speak about the success of people who have achieved, built, or done something amazing, special, remarkable, noteworthy, and/or fabulous. Think of presidents, doctors, chefs, architects, filmmakers, writers, philosophers, CEOs, journalists, and the list goes on and on of people who've had a genuine impact on this world. But rather than underlining their career victories, we speak about the challenges they needed to overcome to actually get there. In each episode, we discuss 3 of such challenges, obstacles, difficulties, and/or hurdles with our guest, putting the messy of their lives next to the masterful. A very warm welcome to you. My name is Alder Pap, and I'm so happy you could make it. So sit back, relax, and download the podcast here. Hello, dear listener. So happy you could make it to this next episode, or better said, episodes of Messy and Masterful. And the reason why we're launching not 1, not 2, but 3 interviews is because Teach Pitch, the organization that gave life to Messy and Masterful, is 10 years old, and we really would like to celebrate this bigly. So that's why here's our gift to you, 3 episodes instead of 1. Now, I am aware we have been quiet for a while with Messy and Masterful. And believe me, I really needed to pace myself not to push more content out there. So really needed to make sure that I just didn't randomly start recording episodes, because we have a certain quality we would like to adhere to. We weren't quiet because we were not doing anything, but because as a team, we needed some time to refurbish. Think of it a little bit like you've lived in a house for over a decade. And, once you're 10 years in such a house, you're going to want a new color of paint on the wall, or perhaps get a new kitchen in and find a new home for furniture that is starting to show some wear and tear. So we've been doing just that, but now we're back. And we're back with a vengeance. So without further ado, in honor of Teach Pitch being 10 years old, but most importantly, in honor of World Teachers Day, it's not a coincidence that our birthday is on World Teachers Day, which is on October 5th of the year 2024. Here are 3 interviews with 3 absolute giants in education. Hope you enjoyed them. So for episode 87 of Messy and Masterful, I had the great honor and pleasure to speak to Wendy Kopp'ss, CEO and co-founder of Teach for All. So for those of you who are familiar with the world of global education, Wendy Kopp'ss is someone who hardly requires any further introduction. She's an absolute force of nature in the world of education. As the founder of Teach for America, a program she founded in 1990 that allows young professionals to devote 2 years of their career in public education. So basically for these young professionals to widen their horizons, to get to know education better, but at the same time also vastly contributing to the quality of education. This formula proved to be a hit, causing loads more of Teach for organizations to see the light of day. Currently, the organization is active in over 63 countries and has undoubtedly had a positive impact on millions of people in this world. Wendy has won many notable honorary doctorates, acknowledgements, and prizes for her work, and it was the biggest honor to speak to her about her incredible career. So please enjoy this interview, episode 87 with Wendy Kopp'ss, dubbed the teacher.
Yes, and a very warm welcome to a new episode of Messy and Masterful. We are in the beautiful city of Doha, sat here in a big convention center, and I have the great privilege of sitting next to Wendy Kopp'ss, founder of Teach for America and founder and CEO of Teach for All, and also kind of a recurring guest of WISE. Not only that, also the WISE Prize for Education laureate at the last edition. A very warm welcome to you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I was very excited that you said yes to an interview because, of course, your story is phenomenal. There's so much in it. What I really liked about your story from the sources that I looked at is that it seemed like you started with an idea that you kind of wrote down in a thesis. And then you said, well, you know what? Actually, I'm going to devote my career to putting that idea into practice. Is that a good summary, or is that
It's a great summary. I mean, I think at the outset, I probably didn't realize this would become my whole career.
Yeah.
But I feel so lucky and privileged, honestly, to have come to that idea as a college senior, and the spark was just feeling like our generation was just searching for a way to make a real difference against the inequities in our country. And I just thought, why aren't we being recruited as aggressively to commit 2 years to teach in low-income communities as we were being recruited to commit 2 years to work in banks and consulting firms? And it was just one of those ideas that was meant to happen and quickly magnetized so many people, from the recent college graduates who were clamoring to sign up to veteran teachers who volunteered to train and support them to the schools that decided to partner with us. And it was just, I would never have guessed that, 30 some years later, I would still be going at it and working alongside colleagues pursuing the same idea in more than 16 countries around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's massive scale, and I want to talk a little bit about that later. I like what you said about kind of the energy that people put into recruiting kind of a financial analyst, and why do they not put the same type of energy into recruiting a good public school teacher? Was that already something you saw, that level of energy? Was that kind of where you saw the difference?
Yeah, because when I was a college senior, our generation was called the me generation. So people thought we just only cared about ourselves and we all wanted to just go make a lot of money. Yeah. And I thought the issue wasn't the generation, it was the recruiters, all of which were companies asking us to commit 2 years to work in their firms. And so it struck me then that we were just missing something, because I felt like many of us were just searching for something else, for something that would give us the chance to make a real difference. And especially against the inequities in the country. And I had reflected so much on my own education and how I felt like the whole world was open to me because I'd had the privilege of a good education. Yeah. Just think it's such a key to transformation. Yeah. So it's kind of where it all came from.
Yeah. So first you stay in theory, you write a thesis, kind of an idea. So I guess it's a lot of speculation, writing down and whatever. And then when was the moment that you put it into practice? What also made you trigger to say, you know what, even though you didn't imagine for it to be 30 plus years, but let's do this.
I just became more and more obsessed with the idea that this had to happen, and that the timing seemed, it was just one of those surreal things. It was just meant to happen. I mean, there were big newspaper articles about the huge shortage of teachers in the urban areas in my own country, in New York City and Los Angeles. You know, the corporate community had a big summit about how they were committed to improve education, and there was a crisis in the country in education. So it just felt like all roads were coming together. And the one thing that everyone I talked to said wasn't true was that they were just convinced that college students would not want to do this. And that was the one thing. I mean, as a college student, I was completely sure they were wrong about that. Yeah. And so it's just one of those things where I just thought this has to happen, and I don't want to miss the window. And I was blessed with the naivete of youth, right? Yeah. Like I didn't know what was not going to be possible.
Yeah. I like that. Blessed with the naivete youth. Yeah. Because you're like, okay, I'm going to prove this. So there was a little bit of a stubbornness, like, everyone telling you college students won't be interested and say, well, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when did the first college students came in? So how did it?
So, I mean, right after I turned it in my thesis, in the spring of my senior year in 1989, I sent it out to randomly selected corporate executives who were quoted in these articles about how education needed to be improved.
Yeah.
And I got a seed grant that enabled me to spend the summer just meeting as many people as I could. But of course, I had no credibility, so it was very slow going. But
Yeah.
I would get into one door and ultimately into others. And really, everywhere I went, people said, this is a great idea, but it will never work because the college students will never do it. So the idea was, we're going to show people. And we launched a grassroots campaign, no email at the time, right? Like, we're talking flyers under doors. We found this network of college students at 100 colleges, like selective and kind of public institutions. And we literally had 2,500 people respond within 3 months, selected. I mean, it's a story, but, we ended up selecting 500 of them. And so 1 year after I graduated, I was looking out at an auditorium full of 489 recent college graduates who had signed up to commit 2 years to teach in our urban and rural public schools.
Incredible. So you showed them. Like,
Showed them. And really, the support did materialize once they saw that.
Yeah. I was interested in kind of the retainment. So the formula is right after college, you put your mind and your energy to good use for a fixed period of time, like 2 years. You start working in public education. Mm-hmm. And then what was the retainment like? Did a lot of people stay, or were they like, well, I've done my 2 years, I'll move on? So it's skilled beyond belief.
I mean, right from the start, the idea was that this was not just about 2 years, that it was about 2 years and every year after the 2 years, because those 2 years out of college are so influential.
I don't know about you, but I am someone who really loves a true crime series. I just can't get enough of them. If I watch them on the streaming platforms, I really cannot stop binging on them. It really is a guilty pleasure. So if you're like me, then you are going to love coldcaseinc.com, which is a platform that offers you unsolved cases of fictional murder mysteries that you can solve. It's a great community of detectives that come together, offering you video and audio evidence, and step by step you can play the game of solving this murder mystery by yourself. We've paired up with the team at coldcaseinc.com, and if you use our code, which is the word MESSY in capital letters, MESSY, then you even get a 15% off your first online membership. So do check out coldcaseinc.com and get crime solving today. We are very happy to be partnering with the Code Zone, which is this amazing platform where people can come together to learn how to code. Creators and future makers, they all come together here, both children as well as adults, to learn how to code and develop things, like for instance their own videos or Minecraft mods. The team at CodeZone believes everyone should be able to learn how to code, young or old, and they've got these amazing subscriptions, very easy and very cheap. You'll learn a lot from them. You could do it live, or you could do it in your own time at your own leisure. We highly recommend it. They are tailored to support individual interests and capabilities, and I'm sure that once you get hooked on the Code Zone, you never want anything more. Check it out, thecodezone.co.uk, or the URL in our show notes.
And so most people I knew were committing just 2 years to work in these banks, and then they would go to business school and back into these firms. And so I just thought, this is going to reshape the priorities of a generation. Like, what if the first 2 years are actually teaching in low-income communities where you see the microcosm of the challenges playing out in your classroom? I thought we would generate this, generation of change makers, right? Who would be committed to taking on these big systemic issues the rest of their lives. And that's exactly what happened in India. And we've seen it now all over the world, the same phenomenon. Like, people come in, they commit just 2 years, but they never leave the work. And globally, it's like 75% of them are still working full time, long term in mission related work. So maybe some of them are still in classrooms as teachers. Others are working throughout every level of the education system as school principals, government ministries, as social innovators. Others will move into other sectors like public health or legal services to take on some of the roots of the issues we're addressing.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. Now, so many years later, so this was all Teach for America when you started it, right? So it was like in the US, and then you said, well, or maybe people from abroad said, well, hold on, we can use one like this. And you said you're in 61 countries. What was it like when you went from the States to another country, like the first one that knocked on your door? How did that go, and how did that make you feel?
Well, as you say, I mean, I wasn't thinking about the rest of the world. I was I had my head down. I was fully focused on the massive issues in my own country. But there was something in the water in the rest of the world. Like within 1 year, I met 13 people from 13 countries, from India to Chile to Lebanon to China to the next place, who were just determined that something similar needed to happen in their countries. And at the time, honestly, I had my hands full, right, with the U.S. And I was torn between feeling like some degree of responsibility. I mean, if they're looking for help, I should respond to that. But just also questioning how much sense it made.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I go back to is the first visit I made at the behest of one of these folks in India who said, just come to India. I just want you to see it.
Yeah.
And I went and was just amazed by what I saw, because as I went over there, I thought, gosh, what do I have to share? Like India, the US, that these contexts are so different. But I was just really struck by the remarkable similarities of the context. Like the first thing we did was visit a school in the slums of Mumbai, and I just thought, the kids in these classrooms, like their reality is more similar to the disadvantaged kids' reality in the U.S. than to the more privileged kids in America.
Yeah.
Right. And what they need in their teachers, therefore, like there's a lot that's shareable. And at every level, we saw the same patterns, like from visiting the college campuses and hearing what the university students were saying to hearing what the potential donors were saying. So I realized then that it would just be short-sighted not to do this in a way that would enable all of these efforts in different countries to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And so that's really what inspired the creation of Teach for All, as a network of these national independent organizations that have a platform to enable their teachers, alumni, and staff members to learn from each other, essentially.
Yeah. I think the network is set up very cleverly, because you raise a lot of kind of national issues, very contextualized, that to a certain extent it is a one size fits all kind of, with the program of getting, young graduates in to the education system. But then there's so many differences. So you do need a country per country approach, because everything works differently. Yeah. As you said, class differences, and one of them, and this is the one I want to address, is also wars. We've just had a plenary session with Education Above All about how wars destruct naturally everything, but of course also education. I see that among the 61 countries, you have the Ukraine, Afghanistan,
soon to be Palestine.
Yes, yeah.
We're announcing the launch.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so how does the network work, kind of to help these organizations out? How does that go?
These are such unbelievably challenging situations. I guess what I would say, first of all, I think it shows us that it's so powerful to have locally rooted organizations developing teachers and leaders committed to education. Because in all of these cases you're mentioning, and others from Armenia to the next one, they're some of the first responders, really. Like, they have relationships in communities and can do so much to keep kids feeling safe and learning. I think what we as a network do is build a community of people who are sharing solutions around how to approach education in emergencies and provide trauma sensitive, education. So we do everything we can to come behind the network partners as they face these really
these challenges. Yeah. And but it's not that you can intervene. It's kind of like you need I mean, you do whatever you can. Exactly. I think that's it. I was just curious because of course education is the first victim of those wars, right? Even if there's, because you want to keep the students safe, the teacher safe, everything safe. So if there's even the threat of something happening, that's the first thing that goes. So,
I mean, there's such horrifying situations. And of course, it makes such a difference if there's a caring teacher who's able to reach out, who has the relationships with kids and families and can bring the kids together and keep them feeling part of a community and part of something larger and keep them learning. So it just makes our work all the more, I think.
Yeah. One question I had was around mobilizing people for social good, and kind of in the 30 years that you've been doing this, whether kind of the process of mobilization, whether that has changed with, social media wasn't around 30 years ago. Maybe college graduates have different priorities or are inspired by different things. Do you notice that in the operations of Teach for All?
It's interesting. I mean, so of course we have different tools today, and we all use them, and it's making life, easier in many ways. But I would actually say that we almost have to remind ourselves that social media doesn't solve everything. So, for example, in inspiring this next generation to put their energy into low-income communities to teach, few people are going to, and of course, our network is recruiting people from all different academic backgrounds. So they are trying to recruit everyone, whether they're engineers or political science majors or the next. And for so many of them, they've heard throughout their lives that if you have other opportunities, you shouldn't teach, right?
Yeah.
So seeing a social media ad isn't necessarily going to overcome decades of hearing all those messages. It's going to take personal relationships. And so it's very interesting because as much as things have changed, in a way they haven't changed. It's still about cultivating relationships with some of the most promising leaders in these countries, really understanding how they're thinking about their aspirations and their choices, and helping them see that this is a path, to making an immense immediate impact, and joining this force of leaders who are going to be committed the rest of their lives to take on these big systemic issues.
Yeah. So you're saying you need to have a continuous conversation, and actually the conversation might have changed, but you've been doing it for so long, so the changes you might have not even noticed. You go with the times. It's not.
I mean, of course we're using social media.
Yeah, but it's more means to an end.
The bigger, in a way, the challenge of what it takes to build this kind of movement has remained the same.
Yeah.
It's still about really getting to know these future leaders, and understanding the pressures on them and how they're thinking about their futures, and helping them see that this is a path. I mean, truly, I think this is the path to no regrets. If you're a civic-minded young leader who wants to help build a strong future in your country, this is just such an amazing path to that. It's a way to, what bigger responsibility can you have straight out of college than teaching, a class of diverse kids, right?
There is no point in denying it. I am in love. And you might have already known it, that I was in love with podcasting and interviewing people all over the world. Well, I'm also in love now with a recording tool for our podcast episodes, which is called riverside.fm. I've kissed many frogs when it came to recording episodes, but this one is really the one with the most amazing studio features. Riverside really offers you everything you need in creating the perfect episode, whether these are short or long, whether these are multiple people you're talking to or just you, or whether this is about your show notes or the video recording or even creating easy snippets that you can use on social media. Riverside truly has it all. If you go to our show notes, you will find a link to Riverside. And if you use that link, you'll even get a 20% discount. Yes, you heard that correctly. A 20% discount
in getting started with this incredible podcast recording tool. Look no more, riverside.fm is here.
And you become part of this effort. I mean, you learn so much and build these networks that enable you to take on the big systemic challenges over time. So it's, helping the next generation recognize that this is a first step in a career that will enable them to live their aspirations to help contribute to their countries.
Yeah, it's a beautiful vision. It's a beautiful mission. And for good reasons, you've been awarded and recognized and acknowledged on so many levels. How does that make you feel when you look at all of this? Especially, as you said, like, I never expected that I would do this for 30 plus years.
Yeah. I mean, I think what gives me fuel and energy, first of all, being part of this global community that we've built, and just kind of seeing how much these people across the network who have committed, quote, just 2 years and haven't left the work and have gone on to do such important things, working collaboratively with many others, with each other and with others in their systems, like just to be part of that. And that's what really gives us fulfillment and gives me.
Can imagine. Yeah. So it's almost like we're like, let it go by itself. I'm just quietly looking at it from behind the screens.
Yeah, like I'm one piece alongside many others who are contributing in a way to building, hopefully, just a thriving.
Yeah, that it thrives by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're here at a conference which is called Creative Fluency, Human Flourishing in the Age of AI. I have the great privilege of speaking to you in another interview after this about AI. But I figured that for this interview, I would ask you, what is for you human flourishing?
Human flourishing. We've spent a fair amount of time over these last years at Teach for All trying to understand, like, what is happening in classrooms where students are developing in ways that will enable them to shape a better future for themselves and all. And we've looked a lot at what are the outcomes that some of the most transformational teachers across our network working towards when they're having that kind of impact. And I guess when you asked about what do I think of when I think human flourishing, I think about the outcomes these teachers are working towards, which is, fostering their students' agency, their awareness of the world and of their self-awareness as well, their level of connectedness and empathy with others, their well-being, and their kind of mastery of knowledge and academics so that they can solve problems and think critically and all. And I guess I think all of that, right? Like human flourishing is all of us finding fulfillment and contributing to a flourishing world. And it takes kind of, all of those things, I think.
It brings it all together. Yeah. There's a lot in there. It was a bit of an unfair question. There's a lot in there, but just like it's good to hear certain elements, like which elements are important to learn. My very 3 last questions to you as someone who founded something inspiring as Teach for America and then Teach for All. Could you finish the following sentence for me? As a child, I wanted to become
As a child, I wanted to become a journalist.
A journalist. And you're not?
I'm not. I was.
Oh, you were. Okay.
I was a journalist in high school and in college.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess I didn't end up going that route.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot of providing information, and I'm sure loads.
I think those skills have helped me.
Yeah, definitely.
Immensely.
Yeah.
Like,
so you're not far off.
I could not get through my life without writing and communicating and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you enjoy writing?
I've learned over time that I tried to write a book, and in fact, I've written a couple, but I realized through those experiences that I don't really enjoy it that much.
Okay.
But I use it all the time.
Yeah. Then not about writing, but about reading. So we ask all our guests if there has been a book or maybe a blog post or a magazine or anything reading that inspired them on their journey. And if so, would you care to share with our audience?
Gosh, there has been so much that has inspired me on this journey. My head went to some of the books I've read along the way that have kind of informed our organizational journey and like the design of, I don't know, how we built this network. There's so much else that's inspired me that I'm reading to this day about everything that's all the big issues in the world, right? That I think is important. But I guess I think about a book I read by Fred Laloux called Reinventing Organizations, which is kind of about what it takes to build collective leadership within our organizations. Because I've come to think that if we're going to develop collective leadership in classrooms and communities, which is how we think about our unifying purpose across Teach for All, then we need to develop collective leadership in our own organization, which means that we need to think differently than, I guess, traditional consensus-driven or hierarchical organizations do. So maybe that's one.
Reinventing organizations. Yeah. Organizational reading. So it sounds very instructive. Is there any novel that has ever inspired you?
Oh, there's so many.
Okay.
But it's going to be hard.
It's going to take another podcast episode. Okay. No worries. Reinventing organizations, we'll be sure to include it in our show notes. And then for the very last question, let's turn the tables. This is now the Wendy Kopp podcast. Who would be high on your list as your guest? You were very high on mine, but who would you like to talk to? It's your pick.
Well, you know what? I'll just say Safina Hussein, this year's Wise Awardee.
Yeah, big congrats.
I always gravitate to the folks who are really working to make the change on the ground in their countries. And she's taking on such a massive challenge and such a massive country through her work at Educate Girls in India, and has generated thousands and thousands of girls' education advocates who are working to change mindsets in communities across India and ensure that girls have the same access to education. So I would love to know more about her life lessons.
Yeah, well, this can be done. So Safina Hussein, if you're listening, you might be busy right now. We would like to talk to you. Wendy Kopp, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the great work you have done and are doing with Teach for All. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. So good to talk to you too.
Take care.
If you liked this episode, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Philip Anderson for our beautiful theme music. This episode was edited by Natalie Piles with production assistance from Genta Metalia.